ladies and gentlemen. I am Robert Kinzel with Knowmium, and welcome to another Knowmium webinar, Business Casual. Today we're talking about interpersonal communication with Susanna Wong.
Hi everybody, Susanna Wong here.
Susanna has an extremely long resume, so I'll just give you the highlights of it. She has a master's in English language teaching. She's a trainer around Asia, Europe, and the United States. She's a course designer at the Chinese University here in Hong Kong. She's a certified master trainer in neuro-linguistic programming. She's a certified master hypnotherapist. She's also a Toastmaster. She's currently a district officer.
Wow.
That is a lot. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me. Pleasure to be here.
Great. Do you want to say anything before we jump in?
I'm very excited. So just wait for the questions.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, so today's topic is interpersonal communication. And this is a huge topic because interpersonal communication means anytime two or more people are talking and people have a chance to be the talker and the listener. So it's not public speaking where you're just one speaker to an audience. It's one-on-one or small group where the ideas bounce back and forth.
Yeah. Sometimes, can I chip in for this?
Absolutely.
Actually, sometimes interpersonal communication, for me, can be about you communicating with yourself as well. Even though it's not really like two people here. And a lot of the communication problems might be from the fact that we do not communicate with ourselves well as well. Yeah.
Excellent. Yes, if you're not communicating with yourself very well, your communication with other people is probably not going to be good either. It's like, I cooked at home and it didn't taste good, but let me go serve that food to all of my guests, right?
Actually, it's something from, as what you said, I have a very rich background in NLP and also in hypnotherapy. We also have a saying that the way that we communicate with others is actually a mirror effect of how we communicate with ourselves.
Excellent. I like that. Now, when we talk about interpersonal communication, we can think about all the different places where we're communicating. And we think about small groups when we're in our office, working in teams. We might be talking one-on-one with our manager, but we're also talking socially with families, with friends, with people at networking events and parties. And we could even get into online communication. But we're not going to get into that today. We're going to be talking about people to people.
Yay.
Live, usually live. Okay, great. So we have, actually I wanted to get something real quick. I mentioned that you are a certified master trainer in neuro-linguistic programming. You're also a certified master hypnotherapist. What is that and how does that relate to human communication?
Good question. Well, communication is a skill. At the same time, I guess we can consider as part of behavior as well. And then our skills, capabilities, and behaviors are all shaped by our past experiences, and which is actually formed our subconscious mind. And both NLP and hypnotherapy, we talk a lot about subconscious mind. And particularly, NLP is a very powerful tool when we talk about communication, because we study a lot about how our brain works and how we can use the language to influence others behavior-wise, and also, of course, to change people's mindsets as well. And that's why I like communication as much as I like NLP and hypnotherapy.
Excellent. Thank you. You've said this before. I can hear it's a go-to, very strong, concise message.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have sourced 3 questions from social media, and thank you for everyone who participated. We're happy to answer more. Whether you're seeing this video on YouTube, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, feel free adding any comments or questions in the comments and we will get to them. Either I will, Susanna will, or maybe both of us will.
Yay.
Excellent. All right, our first question comes from Gina Owen in Dallas, Texas, United States. This is one of the shortest questions we've gotten, and I think it's one of the more humorous, but also important ones.
Yeah.
Gina says, I can't seem to get friends to respond to text messages. What's going on with that?
Well, first, are we sure that they're friends? Just acquaintances. And this is actually very common, I guess, among my own friends, because I taught before, and these days the younger generation, they tend not to reply to any messages. And then I once asked my students, so you didn't actually reply to my message. What does that mean? And they have their own definition of not replying. Actually, not replying meaning no. That's the younger generation. And indeed, we have a very great NLP presupposition is that we cannot not communicate. So no reply, indeed, is also a reply. And I got two friends. They actually have the similar problem. Would you like to hear a little bit about that?
I would.
Okay. And so let's just say we have an A and a B, two friends. Now, A always complains that B never responded to his messages. And then because he has been talking about that for too long time. So that's why one day when I was having dinner with B, I brought it up. So I said, well, A has been waiting for your reply. Probably it was a message that he sent probably last November. So it's been a few months. So B was very shocked. So she was so shocked that, what? He was waiting for my reply. I said, yeah. So, and then she was very interesting. She showed me the messages, all the messages, and I read through all the messages. Okay, actually there's no need to reply to the messages. So the first thing that I would like to share with Gina,
Gina.
Yeah, is that the messages that you send to your friends, do they really need a reply, or is it that you are looking for a reply from your friends? And it's interesting that if we do not ask a question, sometimes it's hard to initiate a reply. And I did a workshop on how to ask questions. And most of the participants, maybe you can actually start counting each day how many questions we actually ask a day. Like real questions, instead of adding a question mark to the end of a statement and pretend that actually is a question. Yeah, if we want to get replies from our friends, responses from our friends, maybe it's time to ask more questions.
Excellent. Yeah, and speaking of questions, well, a couple things popped into my mind. When you initially replied, are you sure they're your friends? I was imagining something like, do you want to meet on Friday? No reply. They don't want to meet on Friday. They don't want to meet at all. But in seriousness, when we talk about questions, we also have to look at, are they open questions or closed questions?
Yes.
So for example, if I have a meeting at lunch and I might text somebody very quickly, are you already at the restaurant? Yes or no, that's all we need. Very direct, very fast. They don't even have to type a full answer. They can put Y or N, yes or no.
Yeah, taking the same scenario, if I send to my friend saying that, hey, just off work, I'm coming. Do we need a reply for this?
Not at all.
Yeah.
But other questions, though, when we really want a thoughtful reply, and it may not be the best for text messaging depending on the platform we're using, the time we have, asking open questions really gets to the heart of understanding somebody else.
Yes.
So instead of, do you want pizza for dinner? Yes or no. What would you like for dinner? Absolutely. So those might be some possibilities. When we look at our written communications and we look at email, we can apply some of those things to text messaging. And I know you mentioned the younger generation is doing a lot of business on WhatsApp and on WeChat here in Asia. And it's very easy, especially on group chats, for people to miss messages. 20 people have replied by the time we are able to get to that, and we just didn't see it. Or, or we just forgot. But other things we would want to consider are, what are some cues we could put into our messages? If we have, for example, the ability to say, please reply by Friday. We're making that request, and that lets them know we have a deadline. Being very nice. Or are you able to reply by Friday? Yep. So those are some things to look at, and we can also provide some resources on
how to ask questions.
Yeah, asking questions and getting replies from people. We focus mainly on email in business, but it is very important with business being done on chat.
Agree.
Excellent. So, next question. This comes from Kate Baklitskava in Moldova. I got that right, didn't I, Kate? Kate says, my colleague doesn't take criticism well, and whenever things don't work out according to the plan, she doesn't admit her fault, and she gets annoyed when asked to take a different approach. As we work in a team, it influences my performance as well. What would be the best way to communicate this problem? So I'm going to take this one first.
Okay.
I think the first thing to do, I think there's two parts to this. Taking a look at the situation and who's involved, but also then how do we communicate directly with that person who might be causing some communication problems. So I'll start with taking a look at, first take a look at the performance and the evaluation factors. If these are coming from above us and from our leaders and managers, we have to be sure that our leaders and managers know what each person is putting in. So we want to leave our name and our mark on everything we do so we get proper personal recognition. And it's not about necessarily, taking credit for the group. That's not what I'm talking about. It's talking about if I do something for the group, or if I did some research, if I made a report, is it clear to the group, but also the leaders in the company to know that I was responsible for that. And that helps us just with our own also personal branding and our own influence around the office and with our own performance results. If they don't know that, is it possible for you to make them aware, even if it's in a private conversation, and possibly even letting them know in a private conversation that there are some situations going on in the team? That's very risky, because if we go to our leader and say, oh, hey, Susanna's in my team, but Susanna didn't do any of her work. Like, I'm kind of telling on her, and I think it is best to try to resolve this with your team, and your leaders are going to respect the fact that your team was able to perform without oversight or without going to leaders saying they didn't work. So that's the first thing to keep in mind. The other thing would be, within your team and within this problematic person, do we have a structure for workflow and for projects? So, for example, are the steps that we're going to follow to complete a project, are they known and are they accepted by everyone? If we take a simple project like cleaning the office, hopefully you don't have to clean your office, but if you did, some people might say, let's start in the kitchen, and some people might say, let's start at our desks. And if we're not starting at the right point, we're not going to meet in the right point. We're not going to work cohesively. Some of us are doing something else in the kitchen, some of us are doing something else at the desks, and then we have a problem later on. We weren't coordinated. So do we have a good workflow? And have we been assigned roles and duties that we have agreed on and that we will be judged by and evaluated on by the rest of the group? If not, that is possibly the first thing to do. And make sure everybody knows what needs to happen, who's responsible for what. And then finally, the other thing I would say is, are there rules needed when we work in a collaborative team? Do we have shared deadlines we've agreed on? Do we have shared ways of communicating? If somebody's sending text message and somebody's writing full PDF reports, we may feel like somebody is doing too much or doing too little. Have we come to an agreement on how we're going to communicate with each other? And that'd be the other thing to look at. Now, for dealing directly with somebody and communicating with a problematic person, I'd like to hear your take on this.
Okay, first of all, I would like not to use the term problematic.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because I believe that give that person a name. Brittany, you said, right? Brittany is a good name.
Brittany's caused a lot of problems in the past.
So let's call that colleague Brittany. And indeed, nobody wants to be criticized, or nobody wants to be changed. Nobody wants to be corrected. So it is very common, normal, that we react in a way that I don't want to listen to you. Or I would say a lot of things to explain my previous behaviors, just to let others know that I make great decisions as well. And interestingly is that we like to change people. Team leaders, they like to change their teammates, and they think that their ways are best. Now that's why it's hard to lead the younger generation these days. Why? It's because they don't want to listen to your suggestions. And after all, who wants other suggestions?
And I don't think it's just the younger generation either.
Maybe
I've dealt with a lot of older generation that did not want to hear any type of constructive feedback.
I agree. It's more about how we can help Brittany to find the best way to fix the solution, the situation. And this is again the art of asking questions. And this is all coaching. What coaching is about is that how we can ask the right questions to help our teammates to fix the stuff. And if you just now you mentioned a question about not being able to admit that I've done something wrong, and how many of us can really stand in front of everybody and say that, okay, my apology, I feel sorry, I've done it wrong. It is really very challenging. And why do we need others to apologize? And why are we actually targeting at that particular person, or are we here to fix the problem and move forward? If we draw the attention of Brittany, is okay, is there any way or how would you like to do it so that you can create a different outcome? And I'm sure that everybody can chip in ideas to help solve the problems. And if we put the focus on fixing the problems and moving forward instead of like, okay, you are the one to be blamed, and I'm sure the next day, Brittany will just knock your door and then say thank you and apologize. So this is an interesting approach, is that instead of pointing a finger at who's done it wrong, why not just put our focus on how we can move forward?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Self-evaluations and that goes back to the team environment. Some teams, they have a very cohesive environment where everyone's willing to say, this is what I did, this is what didn't work, this is what did work. In other teams, that hasn't been set up yet. So that kind of goes back to what I opened with, is how can we create that environment where we can be very transparent and move forward without much blame at all.
That actually reminded me of a training workshop that I did. Probably you did something similar before. It's about how we can give effective feedback. And I did it in an accounting firm, and they found it very strange that why we have to give positive feedback. Say, for example, you submitted an assignment to me on time. As a team leader, what would you say? You know, one of the participants, she shouted, kind of like, what do I have to say? And, it's that person's responsibility to submit the assignment. And okay, then if I really have to say something, then, all right, so thank you for submitting your assignment on time. Next time, can you submit the assignment 2 days earlier? And I was like, hey, that's very interesting. So it seems that positive feedback may not be something, I should say positive feedback is something that might be missing in the working environment. So why we done something right, something great, and it's our responsibility. But if we done something not as right, not as appropriate, then you point a finger at me and then I have to apologize. This is an interesting concept.
Absolutely. All right. Yeah. Excellent. Hope that helps, Kate. And if not, let us know in the comments. Yeah. We didn't want to assume too much with these questions. We didn't try to follow up and say, well, Kate, tell me more about your coworker, simply because, well, we could have, but we wanted this to be open and take a broad view. But if you would like more specific views, let us know. Yeah. And yeah, it's great. All right, our final question today is from Tianyin Liu here in Hong Kong. Tianyin says, I don't see my family members often. And every time I do, like in the coming Lunar New Year holiday, it's inevitable that they will ask tons of questions and have all sorts of expectations imposed on me. For example, being a single child and also turning 30 and being single in a traditional Chinese family. Now, Tianyin says, I treasure my time that I spend with the family, but sometimes I find it hard to hold my temper and communicate my values and goals in a way that they can accept openly. What are your thoughts? Now, I'd like to just say, I know Tianyin, and I'd like to say this is not somebody who has decided to put in as little effort as possible into their life. Tianyin is a professor with a PhD at a major university. So this isn't somebody who says, well, I'm going to play video games for the rest of my life, please accept that. We're talking about somebody who is very professionally accomplished. But I've been in Asia a while, but I am not Asian, and I am not from a traditional Chinese family. But so I think, Susanna, you would likely have much better advice than I would on this one.
Well, just to share, I experienced exactly the same thing. Even worse was that my uncle shook on my face saying that I have to be very honest. I'm not mean, but I really want to tell you that you don't look as beautiful as before. And that was literally in a Chinese New Year holiday early in the morning. I was like, thank you. Now, at the very beginning, probably I was very mad, same as Tianyin. I didn't want any of my relatives and friends to ask stuff like that. And losing temper, that's normal because you got a little bit impatient. And maybe at that time, I'm not sure about Tianyin, maybe for me at that time, I was thinking, I also want to have a great partner. It's not like me wanting to be single. It's just that I just can't find anyone. So stop speaking my mind and that I have to find someone quick, because I also wanted to find someone quick. And then later on, I realized that being single actually is very happy. And we are not like getting settled down for the sake of like getting married because I want to get married, at the age of 30, I need to have a kid, blah, blah, blah. A lot of the kind of a Chinese mentality that women 30, before 30, make sure you're married, and then 30 actually is too late already. But anyway, so later on when I realized actually I'm very happy with my own state. And next time when I see my relatives, I welcome all these questions, because it's the time for me to explain to them that I'm very happy. And I always say this to the younger generation, to whoever asks me, I always say that I'd rather get married at the age of 40 than getting divorced at the age of 40. And after all, we're looking for a life companion. And why are we rushing? Taking our own time. At the same time, I would like to invite Tianyin to look at the positive intention of the family and also friends. They probably want you to have a great partner to look after you, to spend the rest of the time with you. And I think the positive intentions do matter a lot. And then that will help her to calm down and just talk patiently. Mm-hmm. And I think it's not only a problem for girls or female. It should be for guys as well.
I've seen this, especially in East Asia. I've seen it applies to the men as well.
Yeah.
And I think, globally, not just Asia, but globally, people are waiting to get married longer. More people are saying that they're happy being single, even into their 30s and 40s, even beyond.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of social media or just media in every culture with these same trends. And it's not only statistically people are waiting to get married, not having kids, not following the previous generation's idea of what life should be. But they also do a lot of testimonials. And you'll find a lot of business people as well that say, my focus is on being successful. That having a relationship and a marriage is secondary for me. And so this may not be the right way to approach it, but the next time you hear from your uncle or father, somebody says, why aren't you married yet? Say, well, it's 2018, not 1918. No. That may not be the best polite approach, but there are some generational differences, and hopefully through communication we can make other people, other generations understand as well.
Yeah. Well, suggestion for really like a communication suggestion for Tianyin, maybe I would just admit that, like, yeah, I know I'm getting old. Yeah, I know. I also want to get a boyfriend. I'm working on it. I'm cool.
But should she say 30 is old though? I think she might be setting herself up, right, for the family to say, see, you said you're old.
Yeah.
No. 30 is young.
Yeah.
Say, hey, let's talk in 30 years when I'm 60. Then you can.
60 is still young.
Absolutely.
Oh my
You can
god.
criticize me in 30 years.
Age is just a number. It's not about what? Being happy, right? I'm sure that you're very happy, and I'm very happy too.
And I do think one of the key approaches with something's bothering us, whether it's with our family or a friend, one of the key things we can do is talk with them privately and say, when you say this is how it makes me feel. So it's not necessarily blaming them, but it's like, when I hear you say, why aren't you married? It really hurts my self-esteem. And that takes, we have to swallow our pride to admit that. But the research shows that's a great way to get somebody to have empathy for you and really understand how you're feeling, versus saying, don't say that. Say, when I hear this or when you say this is what it makes me think about. And especially if you're there for the holidays, to have some enjoyment, maybe talk with a couple people and just let them know. Would you like to have that conversation? Well, let's have it, and then let's be done with it and enjoy the rest of our time together.
Yeah. Let's do it.
Yeah. Great. So this concludes our business casual webinar on interpersonal communication. I'd like to thank Susanna. We'll we can link your email or a website or something if you'd like in the comments.
Okay, sure.
And we will put a few resources that we've read that have come up in this talk in the comments as well. And again, we're happy to hear from you now about this topic, or if you would like us to cover a certain topic of communication, or if you would like to be on one of our webinars, we'd love to have you. Just reach out to me and let us know, and we will make it happen.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here, Susanna.
Thank you for inviting me.
All right.
Thank you. Bye.
Goodbye, everyone.